Hey, folks, I got good news. It's Friday. So at any rate, we're going to do our wrap up as we usually do. This is going to be, I think, a fairly short one. What we're talking about is the fact that the Ring of Fire is popping, that volcanoes are erupting all over the world, that we're having events geographically happen that we've never had. We've got the west coast of the United States rose 6 feet. We've got earthquakes all over the world. And why I'm doing this is because I studied geology years ago. God told me I was going to need it. And finally, here 40 years later, we're talking about it. But basically, what I want people to know, what he told me is do this show, do this show, do the show, because I want to save some lives. As this happens, there's going to be a lot of catastrophe. And we'll talk about why this has to happen. It's not punishments. It's basically a purge so that we can cleanse the earth, and we can basically bring in not only a financial reset, but basically the harvest of souls that God intends. So with that, let's go to the first slide, and we'll just kind of introduce the show. And here it is. It is Cataclysmic Earth Changes, and it's asking the question, are you in the danger zone? So I'm going to talk about what that danger zone is, and only in generalities, because we don't know exactly where the eruptions are going to happen. We know generally speaking. So what I'm encouraging people to do is to just be aware, and then as things happen, there's a timeline that I want you to understand. Then pray and say, am I safe here where I'm at, Father? Or do you want me to go someplace else? So just ask Yosia where you, God, tongue-tied. Just ask the Lord. That's an easier word for me to say. Am I where I belong, or should I move? Because I think God wants to make sure that those that he has called are protected. It's just like it says in the Bible, 1,000 can fall to my right, 1,000 can fall to my left, but I'm protected. So he just wants me to do this so that people are positioned where they need to be. So let's go I've got a clip queued up for you. Let's go to that, and then we'll just go through a few more slides and we'll be done.
A magnitude 8.8 earthquake has triggered evacuations and tsunami warnings in both Russia and Japan.
An 8.8 magnitude earthquake, one of the strongest ever recorded, struck Russia's Far East early Wednesday.
The tremor struck Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, which is 250 kilometers away from Japan's Pacific coast.
And right on the cusp of colliding tectonic plates along the Pacific's notorious seismic Ring of Fire,
triggering tsunami waves in Japan and Alaska and prompting Pacific-wide warnings.
It's hard to believe, but nearly half the planet's population lives in the shadow of the Red Ring of Fire, a geological monster now stirring in terrifying new ways. Could this be the chain reaction that sets off the deadliest earthquake cycle in modern history? It curls unseen, circling 40,000 kilometers of ocean, a colossal scar stitched into Earth's crust. The red Pacific Ring of Fire, stretching from South America's southern tip, racing past red California's San Andreas Fault, sweeping across Alaska, Japan, and Indonesia down to New Zealand, is the planet's most violent stage. Here lie 3/4 of the world's volcanoes and 90% of all earthquakes, including every red megaquake magnitude 9.0 plus ever recorded. But in 2025, the silence broke. 47 volcanoes are erupting at once, an historic high, melting into magma, triggering quakes and volcanic eruptions. The system is a coiled spring, always on edge. Scientists are now tracking an alarming trend. Seismic swarms from Alaska to Indonesia, synchronized like the beats of a global drum. In 2024 to 2025, earthquake frequency rose sharply. Volcanoes long considered dormant, like Alaska's Mount Spur or Indonesia's Marapi, erupted with little warning. The fear that the ring's entire system may be entering a new red global seismic cycle. And here's the nightmare. The ring's cold, dense bedrock means seismic waves travel farther. A megaquake in one country doesn't just shake locals, it rattles nations across the Pacific. A red magnitude 9.0 Cascadia rupture could send tsunamis to Japan. A red Kamchatka quake can tilt Earth's axis itself. So we ask, is the Ring of Fire not just a regional threat, but the greatest planetary hazard humanity faces? Could we be standing at the edge of a global cascade where quakes, eruptions, and tsunamis strike in a relentless chain?
All right, let's go to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Stay here right where you're at. So here's what I basically want to say, folks. I'm going to go back to the show that I did earlier this week, and I want to make a comment. I knew I was going to get some comments that would not be positive with that show. I'm going to tell you why I did it anyway. It's called courage. Courage is not if you go into a battle and somebody fires a bullet at you. You're in pure adrenaline rush at that point. Courage is knowing that you're going to get some heat for something you do and do it anyway because God tells you to do it. So that's what I did earlier this week. God told me, he's had me telling me for 6 weeks, I need to discuss the volcanic eruptions, the earthquakes that are happening, the earth changes that are coming, and I need to give people a warning. And so what you just saw was film footage of actual eruptions that are happening and events that are going on. But I could only find one place where there was a prophet who talked about a pattern that we could see that could warn us. And the name of that person is one that raises red flags with a few people. His name is Edgar Casey. I believe he is a prophet, but basically we have people out there that that do the best they can do to divide factions and so forth. It's the only place I could find where I could give you the kind of information that I thought I needed to give you to save lives. So I weighed suppressing the information and not stirring up my base with doing what God told me and tell the truth as I saw it, because he told me this was all about saving lives. So what I'm going to be encouraging you to do after this is done, I don't care whose information we're getting, it's only going to be generalities. So I'm encouraging you to, as this thing starts to happen, and it is happening now at an ever increasing rate, sit down, talk to the Father, go to God and say, Father, where do you want me to go? Do I stay here? Do I go someplace else? What is your will for me? If you invoke the name of the Lord, if you invoke Jesus, it doesn't make any difference. Go to the Father, go to the Holy Spirit and say, where do you want me to go? So this slide, getting back to it, is supposedly the first thing we want to be looking for. It's the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. When you see that Vesuvius and Pele both erupt within a short period of time. Remember, in that video clip, it said that events can travel all the way from one side of the world to the other. So the prediction here is that this will be the event that sets the ring of fire truly in motion. And so if you see these two events happen concurrent with one another, then 90 days later, the prediction is that you're going to see a major earthquake in Japan. And is there any evidence of that? Yes, there absolutely is. The geologists are saying that they are having massive swarms in Japan. Now, what is a swarm? A swarm is a teeny tiny little earthquake. It's 1, 1.5, 2 on the Richter scale. You can hardly even feel it. But when they come by the hundreds or by the thousands, what they show is from the records that the geologists keep is it's just nibbling away at that fault, and it's creating a pressure that can cause it to slip. And then you usually get a very big earthquake, magnitude 7, magnitude 8, magnitude 9 even. And so basically that's what's happening under Japan right now. And so we're looking at Japan being the second thing to fall, and then it's just going to go around and unzip all the way around the ring of fire, and by the way, go into other portions of the world. So the next thing you would be looking at was it's going to go through Hawaii, and we'll see what happens there. But then the destination that we're talking about and concerned about is that it comes to the United States of America. And where does it go first? It goes to the West Coast. And then I'm not sure what, I think New York is supposed to be the next destination. And then the Midwest follows that. And it's not just this ring of fire. There's other places in the world. A large portion of Europe is going to have major disruptions. There's already major disruptions happening in China. So just be aware, go out and start watching the feeds, watching the news, and see what's happening globally. If we'll go to the next slide, I'll try to break down for you in simple terms what's causing all of this abrupt earth changes. So that first picture up on the left is an event that happened in 1911. And it's happening again today. And when it happened in 1911, whether it's coincidence or not, two things happened. Basically, there was the largest solar flare we'd had in recorded history. And the only electronics we had at the time was the telegraph, and the wires on the telephone post caught on fire. And the stations where they send the messages, those caught on fire. And then very close to that same time frame, we had the New Madrid fault zone pop, and that's been basically being predicted by prophets of all sorts for at least the last 4 or 5 years. And that prediction started when we had an eclipse that came across the western part of the United States and went right over top of where the New Madrid fault was. And then we had another one a few years later, and it came from Texas, came forward, and it again crossed exactly that same spot. And then all the prophets were out predicting that at some point in time, this is the pre-warning. God never does anything until he warns his prophet, till he warns his people that fault zone was going to go again. And now if we look at this picture up here, this is the same circumstances that were in play the last time that fault popped. And it was a humdinger. It made the Mississippi River immediately swell by 20 feet, casting ships out onto the shore. It made the Mississippi River flow backwards all the way up to St. Louis. It changed the path of the Mississippi River at St. Louis, creating Horseshoe Lake. And that's what's going to be coming now. That's the earthquake in the center of the country. Now let's go on down and understand why all these changes are happening. This is forecast to be a pole shift, and they've been looking at the magnetic fields for years and saying we're slowly drifting. Well, it's because of the ice caps melting. I don't care whether you're a flat earther or whether you're a round earther. I think everybody pretty much agrees the earth is on an axis that's tilted, and as all of that ice melts, the weight distribution of the planet shifts. And look at that lever down below. So think of that. At the bottom part of that lever is a subsidence zone where one plate, the oceanic plate, the ring of fire plate, is going under, let's say in this instance, the United States at the west coast. And that causes that fulcrum, that lever, to pull up. And that's where we got that uplift all of a sudden in California, where overnight, without any seismic activity, the coastline rose 6 feet. That's happening all around the world because we have a weight distribution. And as that happens, they're predicting that there's going to be some portions of different continents that are going to be completely immersed. And when that happens, to create the balance, there'll be new land that will be rising. And in my mind, we have very significantly poisoned our earth. And so maybe in one regard, it's a bit of a blessing because we'll get land coming up that's been under the sea, that's not been poisoned by the activities of mankind for the last 40 or 50 years. So anyway, there's a little glimmer of hope in all of this. And then let's look down to that bottom. And we've been sucking water out of the aquifers and out of our rivers and out of our lakes. And we've caused voids underneath. And what you're seeing is that we're having massive sinkholes open in Florida and in China and in St. Louis, where my sister lives, which is along the Mississippi River, and all over the world. And so these are the three events that we're seeing that are happening, and they're all confirmed by geologists. They're all confirmed by the things that you see in the news today. And I'm just encouraging you, telling you they're going to get worse. We're just at the beginning. And so I'm just saying, be cognizant, pay attention. When you start to see these things in the news, sit down and engage the Father and say, am I safe? Am I where you want me to be? And then the other thing is, remember, we're going to have a financial collapse. This is all about what? The Great Reset, which forces a financial collapse so that we can take away power from the global financial elite. Take their money and you take their power. But what's God's end game here? God's end game is he needs to basically cleanse the earth. He needs to create a situation where mankind will bend the knee and will submit to him. So this is all about what has to change in order to ultimately give mankind freedom and ultimately usher in the greatest revival the world has ever seen. So with that, let's go to the next slide. And these are, as far as I've been able to find from my research, what are projected, generally speaking, to be the safe zones. And Ohio and Indiana and Illinois are in the center of the country, and they happen to be on geologically the most sound piece of geography in the entire United States of America. Missouri and Kansas are mostly safe. If what is predicted happens and the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River merge, then basically that whole river basin is going to be flooded. But a good portion of Missouri is high enough that it will not be flooded, and the same thing for Arkansas. And then a large portion of southern Canada is going to be safe. So just watch the news, see where these earthquakes are happening, and pray to the Lord. And then the second part of this that I really want to get across is, remember, we're walking into biblical times. So even if you moved to, say, the safest place we've talked about here, you moved to Ohio or Indiana, it doesn't mean you're safe, because God wants to open people's hearts. So it's the saying in the Bible is 1,000 can fall to the right, 1,000 to the left, but it shall not harm you. But if you haven't got your spirit right, your relationship with God right, you can move to the safest place on the planet and a tree falls on you, a car hits you, whatever. So we're not just looking at a geographic location, we're looking at you surrendering to God so that you can be part of this harvest of souls, of 2,000 or more souls that God is intending to harvest. So this is a spiritual event that's happening to cleanse the earth, to basically draw people to God, to get us out from under the slavery system that we've been under for thousands of years. So with that, let's go to the next slide. And here's where politically we are moving. We are under a slavery system, and the two principal things that allow it is globalization and dollarization. So what God is orchestrating, he says he can make nations rise in a day and fall in a day. He's taking away control of the global trade system from China and distributing it around the world so that it can't be used to leverage and enslave people. That's called deglobalization. And he's taking away control of the US dollar as the sole reserve currency so that we can't put sanctions on nations, so they can have sovereign currency. America is still going to come out of this as the dominant reserve currency, but we're going from a unipolar world to a bipolar world where there's probably going to, a multipolar world, I should say, where the superpowers of the world are all going to have significant collapses, but still we're going to come out of it, I think, as the predominant reserve currency. But China's not going to go away. They're just going to be relegated to being a regional power. India's not going to go away. Russia's not going to go away. We're all going to share. And what God is doing is bringing us to a situation where we're going to be interdependent on one another. And we have to have deglobalization and de-dollarization in order to give parity to the world. And we have to have a financial restructuring where we have a currency reset, so that it was Eisenhower who said, is there any man, any woman, any child that doesn't understand the principal cause of war is lack of financial equity or parity between nations? So what is Trump doing? He's put down 8 wars. He's trying to put the remaining war out, which would be the Ukraine war, and whatever is happening with Iraq. I hope we can put that to bed soon, and we'll move into a situation where we've ended the wars, and we've basically moved into a situation then where we can have the harvest of souls. We can have peace, and peace means we can have prosperity, and that means we get back control of all the spheres of influence. We get out from under the lying media. We get out from under the education system that brainwashes our kids, and out from under the entertainment system. That's maybe the worst of all, because we watch these movies and we have all of our filters off because we're just being entertained. No, we're being subliminally conditioned. And the banks are going to close, at least many of them, and many of the corporations, you can see them falling. And as we go into the exposure worldwide of all the elections that have been stolen, not just the United States presidential election with Trump, but 71 other nations, we're going to get new governments. And that is going to open the world to a situation where the division in the world is going to be greatly reduced. And we're going to come to the understanding that we're all God's children, that we're all on this earth, and the only enemy we have is the global financial elite who puppets all the nations of the world. And we're going to be forced into a situation with what's coming where we put aside our biases, where we put aside our hatreds, where we stand united, not as one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, but the entire world stands in unity, in harmony, in brotherly love, because we're going to be driven to find out that we're all interdependent on one another. So with this, let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to break down some of the social changes that will happen. A social structure will fracture. And what I see happening, and just think about it, I see that happening right now. I see that we can look at the commercial real estate market in all those big cities, and those buildings stand vacant. They have maybe 40% of the occupancy they had before COVID, and now they're coming up for new leases. And with a 40% occupancy, those buildings, and they were at 3% maybe back when those leases were let, and now at 7% with a 40% occupancy. Those buildings are so far underwater that people are just going to walk from them. So we're going to have chaos in the big cities, and we've created a situation that, or I should say, God has facilitated a situation where people no longer have to stay in those cities. They can choose, and I think have been choosing, to go to smaller towns, to rural areas where there's lower cost of living, where there's greater sense of community, where God can pull us together and create family and create the very things that you see in that picture down below. Stalin said, if we can get rid of American patriotism, American family values, American Christian values, America will fall from within. So if we go to the small towns, we get out from under the liberal mindset in California, out from under the financial control in New York, for example, we have a chance to have a completely new start. And with technology that's coming, I don't think we're going to have to work 60 or 70 hours a week. If you're in a small town, you're not going to face an hour-long commute each day. So we're going to have time to get to know our kids, to get to know our wife, to get to know the community, the people in the community. So with that, I'm just going to read these things. Here's what's coming. Migration from the coast to the heartland. And why is that going to happen? That's going to be because of these earthquakes that are going to happen on the coast, and not just the coast of the United States. Think about this. 70% of the entire world's population is living on the coast. And where is all the friction that causes these earthquakes? It's on the coast. It's plates coming together to cause friction, to cause these earthquakes. And the other thing that's happening is, as these cities go through the metamorphosis that they're having, the corporations fall, basically the shopping centers are closing. What God is trying to do is say, I never intended you to be controlled by corporations. So I'm going to go back and give you something even further back in history, which is something that was said by Abraham Lincoln way back then. He said, I fear for our nation because I see the time when banks and corporations are forming. They're going to merge with banks, which will in turn give them enough power to control the political situation, which will give them the money and the influence to control and enslave the population. So we leave that environment and we come to the country, and we basically reclaim what God sent us here for: faith and family and patriotism. And what God chose America for is this: we were the unique nation. We came from Europe, where under feudalism, where we couldn't own a home, where we had no rights, where we could be put under the king's control at any time and be sent out to fight his wars, be conscripted. I butchered that word. That's okay. At any rate, basically, we now have to have a situation where we can go back to what God intended us to be. So we were to come here. People migrated from all over the world who hated one another. And when they got here, they found they were interdependent on one another. And God used America to be the melting pot of the world, to show us that it was the governments that divided us, that when the people came together, that we could find out that we live in unity. And it's just like the Bible said, the number one thing in the Bible is to love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. And the second is unto it to love thy neighbor. So as these systems fall, and all of the lies that are inflicted on us, we're going to open our eyes up, and we're going to see that There's nobody out there that's our enemy other than the power brokers of the world. The person who lives next door to you, whether he's black or white or Hispanic, is not your enemy. The person who has a different religious belief is not your enemy. The person that makes more money or less money than you is not your enemy. We're all put in the same basket by the control levers of the global financial elite, and that power structure is basically emanating all the way back to the feudal system in Europe, and basically where they had kings and we had no say. So we came here so that we could have a say, so that we could have ownership of homes, and that we could have rights, that we would be able to vote. And we were the first country to become a republic, which is different from communism, different from socialism, different from democracy. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And I've talked about it forever. And basically, we're the great experiment, and God intends to use us again to basically unite the people. So God, I believe, is gonna use Donald Trump to basically restore financial security to the United States, technological prowess. Remember, we developed the Industrial Revolution. We were the innovators of the computer and the .com and the internet and AI and so on and so forth. So American ingenuity is going to restore America's financial security, and then we will help restore the rest of the world. So there's just one more slide. Let's go to that. And this is from personal experience. This is what God did for me. Like if you've heard my story, I was raised by a mother who was a manic depressant, a father who was an abusive alcoholic, a grandmother who used to whisper in my ear, "You're spawn of the devil. You're going to hell," because my father was an alcoholic and I was his child. And so when I was about a junior in high school, a couple of years before I had my near-death experience, God came to me and said, "I'm going to remake you. I'm going to give you a script that will give you clarity, that will give you peace, that will allow you to chart the course that I have in store for you." So real quickly, what he did is he gave me these, he told me to pray on it, and I came up with these 12 words. And they're similar to the two Beatitudes in the Bible. He then helped me create the definitions for them. So humility, we know from the Bible, you're proud of fall comes before the pride. Okay, then we go over to forgiveness, and we know that that's the number one thing we have to do, because if we don't forgive, it comes back to hurt us. And devotion, I want to focus on it because it's devotion to the higher powers, to God, to spirituality. And then the one that I was talking about when I opened the show up is courage. I knew when I invoked the name of Edgar Casey, because he had some information that I thought could save lives, that I might have some criticism. But God told me, you do what I tell you to do. This is not about your audience, not about whether you lose a few people. It's about how many lives might you save. And then what kind of person are you if you don't have sincerity, if you don't have kindness, tolerance? I see typo, there's sincerity there twice. At any rate, these are the virtues, and I committed my whole life to basically integrating those into my personality. I encourage you to do something similar, and you'll find that 3 or 4 years out, you'll be a totally, totally different person. Let's go to the last slide, and we'll wrap this up, and I'll wish you a very, very, very happy weekend. So I've had this up and talked about it forever. I hope that Monday we're going to have an announcement. I'm talking to my publisher again on Saturday, and I'm hoping she's going to have everything lined up so that we can have the announcement date. We decided we're not going to do a pre-sale. Here's what I'm going to do. I thought about this. I talked it over with my son, and I have a pretty big audience now. And what I want to do is put out a discount for the first couple of weeks. I know my audience will hear me, and they'll be able to go in and buy this book while that discount is on. The rest of the world will take a while. It might take a month. It might take 2. It might take 3 months before they come across this and try to buy and decide to buy the book. But I want to basically do what I can to say to my audience, I appreciate you following me. I appreciate you reading the first book. I appreciate you coming. I appreciate the comments that you make. And so I'm going to do what I can. I don't even know what the book is going to cost right now, but basically we'll put a discount on it and see to it that if you connect within the first couple of weeks, you'll be able to buy the book at a significant discount. So with that, thank you. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe, please follow. And most importantly, with everything that's coming down, the financial system is collapsing. There's turmoil all over the world, where at the time God told me, he released me. He said, I'll keep you in the cleft of the rock until all of society is basically falling apart. And we're there. So the messages that I give are ordained by God so that we can wake the people up, open their eyes up in the division, and we can basically fulfill the destiny that God intended for America. We're supposed to be that shining light on the hill, and we can't be that if we're divided. And the Bible says a nation divided is doomed to fall. So we have to come together, and what will do that is the truth. We have to recognize that our history is a pack of lies, that our schools are propaganda machines, that the media is the fake news. Well, what I've done is I've prayed to the Lord. I've studied for 57 years, and I've compiled 2 books that go against the powers that be that control those mechanisms. And I've told you the truth, and hopefully the truth will set you free. So with that, we'll see you next week. Be blessed.